Hey everybody! So for this assignment, I actually read 5 screenplays just because that's my focus as a writer rather than on novels or short stories, anything like that. I'm focusing on writing for television and film. And the genre that I'm really focused on would be coming of age stories and things like that. I'm really interested in slice of life things, and along with sci-fi and fantasy and things like that. But all of the stories that I've written and the stories that I love to write and read are stories of younger people, teenagers, young adults. Maturing and finding themselves and things such as that. So that's kind of the direction that I took this. First up, I read the screenplay for the movie Booksmart. And it starts off in a really interesting way. It details a lot of the surroundings rather than introducing us to our protagonist in the beginning through dialogue or anything like that. It chooses to focus on the background elements of the scene, like photos that are hanging up of certain figures that are meaningful to our main character, along with awards and medals and things like that. They happen to be the valedictorian, and it chooses to focus on that. Just there are a lot of elements in there that really focus on who this character is and who they were before our plot takes place, just to give the audience that layer of exposition and understanding of where this character comes from, in order for us to understand where they will be going in the plot of the movie. Next, I read the screenplay of Eighth Grade. Eighth Grade, the last character was a senior in high school. This one she's a 13-year-old, so she's going through a lot of different struggles, and it actually focuses on a monologue by the main character. Instead of anything in terms of setting, it focuses on what she's talking about, and her monologue itself reveals a lot of things about the arc of the movie and the theme behind it and what lesson is going to be taught through the film. It really focuses on being yourself and being true to yourself and things like that. And the character's mannerisms and the way she presents herself and her message, it's very clear that she herself is not comfortable with who she is, and is just kind of trying to talk to herself in a way. And you see that arc comes to fruition by the end of the film. The next one that I read was, what did I read? The third screenplay that I read was Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And I found the opening of this one really interesting because it actually doesn't focus on our protagonist even a little bit. It doesn't even introduce our protagonist. I think that the screenplay itself is in a very interesting position just because there have been plenty of stories about Spider-Man in the past, so every audience knows who this person is. They don't really need to take time setting that kind of stuff up. So instead, they give us a very optimistic and very positive outlook on the character of Peter Parker and Spider-Man, and the writers really get us invested in who this character is as kind of a symbol of positivity and what to strive towards. And it's really a great direction for this opening scene to take, just because very shortly into the film, that character actually dies and is replaced by a very negative and backwards view of who Spider-Man is. And without this scene as a reminder of who Spider-Man should be and who we can all strive to be, we wouldn't be able to have that direct comparison when comparing to the new Spider-Man that we get. And it kind of acts as motivation for the protagonist that we were introduced to, Miles Morales, as somebody to look up to and somebody to know that that is what you can be. That is, whatever. I'm going to cut it there. For the next two, I actually went into the realm of sci-fi. I decided to look at the movie I Am Mother, and the opening scene of this film actually is quite silent. It doesn't have any dialogue, and all it is doing is introducing us to this post-apocalyptic world that the story takes place in, and kind of sets in motion the rest of the plot, and you see it start to really begin. You're not required to have any other exposition behind that or before anything. You're immediately introduced to the movie's eventual antagonist rather than the protagonist, and I think that that's very interesting, just because it's in stark contrast to all of the other screenplays that I have read. The last screenplay that I read was from the show Black Mirror. It is the episode titled Archangel. And the opening to this episode is really, really focused on the planting the seeds for the characters' eventual motivations and the eventual conflicts that we will see in the plot of the episode. It starts with a mother struggling to give birth to her daughter, and through the dialogue, it is revealed and it's shown how the mother already, in a way, feels like a failure as a mother because she wasn't able to make the birth happen naturally, and doctors had to intervene and things like that, and she's already overly worried about her daughter's safety because of that. And that ends up being the backing of a lot of the choices that the mother makes in surveilling her daughter and things like that, that eventually lead to a breach of privacy and the conflict of the episode. I thought that it was really interesting to read all of these screenplays and to see how each one opens in such a different way. Some chose to focus on the setting, some chose to focus on the characters, and even those that focused on the characters, some focused on the protagonist, some decided to go in depth as to who the antagonist was. I thought that that was really interesting to see because at the root of all of these, they're telling kind of the same story of, like I said, a coming of age story, and our main character will grow and develop and become who they truly are and discover themselves and things like that. And it's just interesting to see that even though each story is so similar in many ways, each one opens in a very unique and different way. And it just goes to show that there isn't one true way to start a story or one thing that a writer should focus on in the beginning. Every story requires something different. If a story takes place in a crazy different world, it's might be important to focus on the setting and detailing the properties of that world before you get into the real plot of things. If a story is very personal and internal to the protagonist, it might be important to focus on who they are in the beginning and really get a sense of who they are so the audience can attach themselves to that character and feel with them. But yeah, that's it. Thanks for listening if you listened, and stay healthy. Bye, guys.